Well, hi there, folks. I'm Dara Star Tucker, and this is The Breakdown. Thank you so much for joining me here on KJLH for this once weekly show where we can check in with each other and get informed about the issues that matter. I want to invite you all to find me online. And where can you do that, you ask? Well, the best place is going to be Instagram. I trust you're already following the KJLH Instagram page. If not, their username is Radio Free KJLH. And you can also find my personal page where I share breakdowns, music, comedy, and all manner of personal ramblings. That's at Dara Tucker B on Instagram. That's Dara Tucker B. If you're on Facebook, Threads, TikTok, or YouTube, you can find me at Dara Star Tucker. That's Dara with one R and Star with two. Well, things are moving really quickly these days. I cannot believe that we're more than halfway through July already. I hope everyone is finding ways to enjoy your summer. This has been a really busy time for me. I work with several nonprofits to help get the word out about important issues, so I haven't had a lot of time to just get outside and enjoy the weather. I have a pretty short expiration period in the heat, to be honest, but I would like to see a little bit more sun this season. But I've been hard at work helping to inform folks about what it is that we are facing this year. And a lot has happened on the political landscape in just the last month or so. And I get the feeling we are going to be keeping this pace up for the rest of the year. Already, Joe Biden's debate performance has put his candidacy in peril. Who knows, by the time this airs, there may already be an announcement. I've dedicated the last two shows to that topic. Then, of course, we had the assassination attempt on Trump. Now, I'm one of those rare folks in our community, shall we say, that does believe that this was a legitimate attempt on his life. I just don't think he would have put his life in peril, not at the hands of someone who could not even join their school's rifle club. The dude was not a good shooter. I think Trump loves himself too much to have put himself in that kind of peril. To have a bullet miss him by 2 millimeters? No, sir. No, Trump is not going to put himself in danger like that. But that's just me. Many people feel that that was a staged event. But honestly, considering our history with gun violence in this country, I think it was pretty ironic that he ended up suffering at the hands of the typical gun violence that is very random in this country while he was speaking about immigrants, while he was denigrating immigrants. That is exactly what he was doing when he was shot at. He was blaming immigrants for crime. And right in that moment, he ends up getting shot by a young white man. The irony is almost too much to bear. So no, I don't think he would have played himself like that on purpose. And I will say that we've seen that man play footsie with the Christian community. I've been highly skeptical at his ability to suddenly find religion when he realized that constituency, conservative Christians, were going to be necessary to put him in the White House. But let me tell you something. If he was not a full-on believer before that happened, he certainly should be now. Because an experience like that, it has to shake you up. It has to make you rethink some things. And I don't know, maybe the Lord did have his back. Clearly, it was not his time to move on up a little higher. Somebody was looking out for him, because I can tell you that there were probably a lot of folks out there who were hoping that things would have turned out another way for him. But hey, he lived to fight another day. So let's hope that he is rethinking his life. I mean, I'm not holding my breath, but we can dream. And then, of course, you had the Republican convention on the heels of that experience where they got to celebrate him like the risen savior that some of them think he is anyway. I'm going to play you a little clip of Tim Scott, the useful stooge, as I like to call him, describing his would-be boss's near-death experience at the convention. If you follow me on TikTok, you know there are very few things that bring me more joy than making fun of Tim Scott.
If you didn't believe in miracles before Saturday, you better be believing right now. The devil came to Pennsylvania holding a rifle, but an American lion got back up on his feet and he roared.
He is the gift that keeps on giving. And then Trump himself made a long, rambling, incoherent speech accepting the nomination. I'm going to play the video for you that I did in response to his speech, which frankly, the speech put me to sleep. If anyone thought that we were going to see some new and improved, changed man, then they were sadly mistaken. Here were my initial thoughts after watching his acceptance speech. Oh my God. Did you all see Trump's speech at the RNC the last night of the Republican National Convention? Did you all see this? I don't know what kind of highlight reel footage that they are getting ready to show you, but this was the most long, rambling, incoherent mess of a speech that I think I've ever seen. I was having trouble staying awake. I felt sorry for anybody who was in that arena, frankly. I mean, it started out like this.
Dana White, I am the CEO and president of the Ultimate Fighting Championship.
I said, let Trumpomania run wild, brother.
Which was very much giving this.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of America. President Camacho.
I cannot be the only one who noticed. Then he went into a detailed description of the assassination attempt, and you thought, oh, maybe he's gonna set a little bit of a different tone. No. He went on and on and on and on about all of the illegals and how dangerous they were. They're all criminals. They're insane asylum patients. They're rapists. They're murderers.
They're sending their murderers to the United States of America.
I mean, he really was playing his greatest hits, and it makes you think. He came in 2015 with this same shtick. All he really knew about or cared about was that he wanted to balance out the trade deficit with China, which he did not do. It got worse during his presidency, so there was that. And then there was all the stuff about illegal immigrants coming up from the southern border. That's when people really got excited about his candidacy in 2015. If you remember, there were 17 candidates that were all trying to break out of the pack, and he was having a really difficult time. And it wasn't until he started hammering away at immigrants did people start to get really excited about this guy. At the convention, they were waving these signs. Like, this wasn't even happening in the era of Reagan or Bush. You would not see signs like this being waved at a Republican National Convention, and they were doing it happily. It was like a celebratory environment. That's why I keep saying the Overton window on what it even means to be a conservative has shifted. But you know what he didn't bring up? No one brought up for the entirety of the convention is reproductive rights. Because they know how unpopular their position on this issue is, particularly with the choice of JD Vance as his running mate. This dude wants a national abortion ban with no exceptions for rape or incest. Conservatives don't even agree with that position. So they didn't bring it up at all. And this has been a staple. This has been a constant talking point in the Republican Party for 50 years, really, since Roe v. Wade. Now we've moved on to illegals and trans people and all of this stuff. All of it, in my opinion, is a distraction from the fact that there are tech billionaires and right-wing nationalists who are trying to take over the party for all kinds of nefarious purposes. His speech was an absolute incoherent mess, no matter how anyone tries to spin it. Y'all, check your voter registration. Check it. It's in my bio. Check it. So it was a farce, as if we expected anything else, but his people ate it up, of course. You have to wonder what these people are thinking. They sat there and listened to that same incoherent rambling that I did, which frankly was just as embarrassing as Biden's debate performance, but they popped balloons and they danced in the falling confetti and cheered him on all the same. I mean, I'm not advocating that we lift anybody up as some kind of a cult hero, but it's almost enviable to see that kind of party unity compared to what's going on the left. I think a lot of left-leaning folks are definitely more thoughtful, more critical. Statistically, they are much more highly educated, and they do have a reputation for cannibalizing their own, unfortunately. Now, the other major thing that happened, I told you all, it's been a busy few weeks on the Ponderosa. The other really important thing that happened is that Trump has chosen a running mate. JD Vance, a senator from Ohio. Now, let's talk about this guy, because this is not your typical running mate. He has very little experience as a legislator. He's only been in the Senate about a year and a half. He had no legislative or governing experience before that. So why was he chosen? Well, I want to get into that today. Why did Trump choose this moderately known senator with not much experience to be the person in line for the presidency if Trump were to win another term? Well, I did a video on that recently, and I want to play that for you now. A lot of folks are just getting to know JD Vance, so I wanted to spend the rest of the show kind of getting into his background and explaining a bit more about why he ultimately was Trump's guy. So here's the brief explainer that I did on him, and after this, I'll be back to go into a bit more detail on his background. Here it is. JD Vance, Trump's new VP pick, is right out of Project 2025 central casting.
This is the craziest fear tactic they're using right now. I think most Americans couldn't care less about Project 2025.
From his draconian views on everything from reproductive rights.
If a young woman does get pregnant, that she isn't forced to have an abortion, but she sees having a baby maybe as an opportunity.
To LGBTQ issues, to his support of Trump's authoritarianism.
I think that what Trump should do, like if I was giving him one piece of advice, fire every single mid-level bureaucrat, every civil servant in the administrative state, replace them with our people. And then when the courts stop you, stand before the country like Andrew Jackson did and say the Chief Justice has made his ruling, now let him enforce it.
To his opposition to any sort of social safety net. But what I really want you all to start paying attention to is a shift in something called the Overton window. Notice how the definition of what it even means to be conservative is changing very rapidly. The person who's been chosen to hold the office that's the closest to the presidency was vetted and selected because he's not only against reproductive rights, even in the case of rape or incest, but because he refused to support a bill that protected contraception. That wasn't even on the table before Trump's presidency. He voted to block access to in vitro fertilization. Seriously, when you hear some of the things that this man has said about forcing women to stay in violent marriages.
My grandparents had an incredibly chaotic marriage in a lot of ways, but they never got divorced. That was clearly not true by the 70s or 80s. But a lot of moms and dads saw marriage as a basic contract. You just dissolve it and go on to a new business relationship.
To give birth against their will, even in the case of rape or incest.
Should a woman be forced to carry a child to term after she has been the victim of incest or rape?
It's not whether a woman should be forced to bring a child to term, it's whether a child should be allowed to live.
It's enough to make the hairs on your neck stand on end. I first became aware of JD Vance back in 2016 when he released his book called Hillbilly Elegy. He was a media darling at that time, and what's crazy is he actually hated Trump. I mean hated.
I can't stomach Trump. I think that he's noxious and is leading the white working class to a very dark place.
He said that he would vote for his dog before he voted for Trump. He said Trump was unfit for office. He said he believed Trump had sexually assaulted a woman. He said Trump was worse than OJ. He said Trump was quite possibly America's Hitler. He loathed him. Loathed him. So what changed? Well, I'm guessing that after he started to realize how profitable it was to capitalize on the difficulties and hardships of Rust Belt folks, he figured out who he was going to have to cozy up to in order to have a successful political career. So he pivoted hard right. He ran for office and was elected to the Senate in Ohio, and suddenly he's changed his tune about Trump. Obviously, Trump is benefiting from his alignment with Vance because of Vance's book and his supposed reputation for championing the common man, but it's all window dressing. The fact of the matter is, JD Vance is now a multi-millionaire who invests in a ton of tech companies that have their foot on the necks of the common man. He's mastered the art of convincing these everyday folks that he's on their side while simultaneously exploiting and profiting from them in his business dealings. Trump's VP pick came as a surprise to absolutely no one. It's a shrewd move that Trump is hoping will pay off in the end. I'm sure his team was quite aware of Vance's actual views on Trump, but Vance's selection should be further confirmation that they are placing the chess pieces in order for the full execution of Project 2025 or Agenda 47 or whatever you want to call it.
This is the craziest fear tactic they're using right now. I think most Americans couldn't care less about Project 2025. I reviewed a lot of it. There's some good ideas in there, Rob. There's some things that I disagree with, but most importantly, it has no affiliation with the Trump campaign.
So as I tell you all quite often, stay aware, stay informed, and check your voter registration at the link in my bio. Okay, so that's the introduction to JD Vance, but there's so much more to this guy than even I had the chance to get into on that brief explainer. So JD Vance is someone who was born into a working class community in Ohio, who has always had a focus on the communities in which he grew up, sort of the lower middle class or working class white folks. And he hasn't been shy about that fact. And I remember when his book first came out in 2016, Hillbilly Elegy. I never got to read it, but I ended up listening to several interviews that he did, one of them with Terry Gross of NPR's Fresh Air. So in that interview, as you heard, he was not a fan of Trump's. He has since, though, apologized for being so critical of him. But as his former roommate has said, This guy is a Yale law graduate. JD Vance is a Yale law graduate. He's a smart guy. And this guy, Josh McLaurin, Vance's old roommate, has an interesting view of him. And I'm going to play a clip for you of what his former roommate has to say about JD Vance in light of how drastically JD Vance's views on Donald Trump have shifted since they were roommates at Yale.
So much of this MAGA stuff is performance, right? You have to choose to really lay it on thick, but it may come from, some legitimate gripes or anger that some voters have. I mean, there's anger on both sides, but it's a choice to turn that into contempt. And I think that that's what JD has been doing ever since getting into politics. So I think what we're seeing now is that anger that he had, maybe from childhood, who knows, it kind of doesn't matter. He is now taking that anger and saying he wants to impose that bad feeling, that contempt on the whole country because of his great distrust for and the caricature that he's made out of media, the left, whatever his political opponents might be. He had a gut reaction like so many of us did to Trump. He said, this guy's clearly narcissistic. He's a fraud. I mean, he was saying that Trump was a fraud all the way until 2021. There was recently unearthed audio to that effect. So it's not like he doesn't get it. He was very insightful. I mean, the text he sent me said that Trump was the fruit of collective neglect by the Republican Party, who was ignoring the working class, and that he was a demagogue who was exploiting the failures of his party. That is sophisticated analysis that still holds true. I think that's what makes him more than just an ordinary flip-flopper, right? Like plenty of Republican elected officials were against Trump before they were for Trump. And I think that's why the campaign is trying to treat it like old news. But JD's different, and I think more dangerous, because rather than just be an empty suit who's sort of parroting MAGA talking points, I think that he has let his anger really take over his life and make him convinced that Trump is the right choice for America. I don't think he's going home and having a whiskey and putting his feet up and saying, oh man, that Trump guy's crazy, but I have to defend him on TV. I think he's at this point so angry, so motivated by that spirit of revenge that Trump has publicly espoused, that he's the perfect running mate for Trump, which I've said recently, and also that he's really amplifying the MAGA moment and doubling down instead of being a more moderate pick.
So there's his roommate making some pretty astute observations about who this guy really is and what he believes. Basically, he's saying he's allowed that anger at the liberal left to take over a certain moral instinct in him. And from what it sounds like, he's saying that it's kind of turned him over to the dark side, a la Darth Vader or something. I mean, I say that jokingly, but it's not far from the truth, it sounds like. So why put so much emphasis on the vice presidency? The vice presidential pick historically has never had much of an impact on the race. Trump is a known entity, and I think he's moved as high as he's going to move in the polls. I don't think there's much more room for growth. People pretty much know how they feel about him. There was a slight bump up when JD Vance was announced, but for the most part, Trump doesn't really need him, right? Trump doesn't really need anyone, really. The folks who love him are going to stick with him, and if they choose Tweety Bird as his running mate, they're still going to vote for him. So then we have to ask the question, why JD Vance? Well, first of all, Trump is the same age as Biden was 4 years ago, when everyone was saying that he was too old to be seeking the presidency. So for as much as Biden has come under scrutiny, Trump is experiencing mental decline as well. He's brash and he's confident, but if you listen to a lot of what he has to say, there's not much in it that makes sense at all. I mean, if you listen to that convention speech, it sounded like the incoherent ramblings of a mentally compromised elderly person. But he's very confident with it, so people listen. There is no reason that speech should have gone on for an hour and a half. He needs a handler. But this is the United States of America. We love a confident speaker, even if they don't have a whole lot to say. So then that's why JD Vance is coming under so much scrutiny. If Trump were to be elected, this would be the guy that we would be left with. And he is all in for Project 2025. And it's really interesting to hear him say at the beginning of that piece that I played for you that no one cares about Project 2025, supposedly, while in the background, he's bosom buddies with a bunch of folks who wrote the thing. Kevin Roberts, who's the head of the Heritage Foundation, which developed Project 2025, is a very good friend of JD Vance's. Kevin Roberts was practically salivating when he heard the news that JD Vance had been selected as Trump's running mate. Here he is.
We have confirmed news that Senator Vance is the vice presidential running mate. You will see a broad smile on my face because you may know that we're good friends. The entire list of names considered are great men and women, truly. There, among them, though, was someone that privately we were really rooting for.
But there's another far more insidious reason that JD Vance was chosen to be Donald Trump's running mate. And this is the reason that all the heritage guys and the tech billionaires, which we'll get to later, are so excited for this pick. JD Vance has essentially expressed that he would be willing to do what Mike Pence would not. Now, we all remember with January 6th, they were pursuing every possible legal means to try and thwart the certification of the election results, right? That's the reason those folks were scaling the walls of the Capitol and spreading fecal matter all around. That's the reason that they showed up with zip ties, okay? They wanted to stop the process wholesale. But there was a legal battle also going on behind the scenes where they were organizing a completely different slate of electors to go and take the place of the electors that were supposed to vote for Biden. And a lot of those folks have had to answer for that legally since then, although a ton of them were present and accounted for at the Republican National Convention. They were given a place of honor and celebrated like heroes there. But it was illegal what they were trying to do, basically replacing the electors that were supposed to vote for Biden with a fake slate of electors that were handpicked by a bunch of MAGA operatives, and they were literally going to try to take over the electoral process by force. It was nothing short of an attempted coup. Well, Mike Pence wouldn't go along with this. Vice President Mike Pence, he would not go along with it, and he opted to just go ahead and do his job and certify the election as he was required to do by law. But Trump's people were not happy about that. They showed up with a noose trying to hang Mike Pence outside of the Capitol, or at least they threatened to do so because they felt that he was disloyal because he wouldn't do Trump's bidding. So I'm going to play you a clip that illustrates exactly how Vance would have handled that situation.
Had you been vice president on January 6th, would you have certified the election results?
If I had been vice president, I would have told the states like Pennsylvania, Georgia, and so many others that we needed to have multiple slates of electors, and I think the U.S. Congress should have fought over it from there.
So that right there is a big clue as to why this dude is so appealing to Trump. And he sent signals like this on many levels that he would be a willing acolyte of Trump's. Basically, he would be there to do Trump's bidding whenever necessary. Just, yes, a boss. Shine your shoes, boss. That is JD Vance. Now, as I said, this guy didn't really have any governing experience before he was chosen to be Trump's vice president. He's 39 years old, and he's been a senator for less than 2 years. There are plenty of people like Marco Rubio and Tim Scott that were waiting in the wings and were ready to do Trump's bidding also. So why would Vance have been chosen over folks like that? Well, this is where it starts to get really deep. What's at the root of all this Project 2025 stuff, this Heritage Foundation stuff, this Federalist Society stuff, is the deeply embedded assumption that straight Christian white men are supposed to exert a certain dominance in the world, that Christian white families are supposed to subdue and dominate the earth. We all exist at their behest. And it's not like a lot of them would really come out and say that people of color or gay people or any other marginalized group doesn't have the right to exist, but we are not supposed to outrank them in the social hierarchy. There's a deeply embedded belief among these folks that they are God's favorite. And you'll hear this mentality echoed in a lot of their policies. There's a Christian nationalist movement called the Seven Mountain Mandate that was started in the 70s. If you haven't heard about it, look it up. It has a lot to do with Christians having a mandate from God to dominate 7 spheres of society: family, religion, education, media, entertainment, business, and government. They feel that they have a mandate from God to control all of these spheres. This is generally a part of a philosophy called dominism. And if you didn't grow up around this stuff as I did, this may sound a little bit far off to you, but I assure you that this is where a lot of these folks are coming from. Mike Johnson is another one. He's the Speaker of the House who had a lot to do with organizing the legal challenges to the election results. He's a lawyer. JD Vance is a lawyer. A lot of these folks behind the scenes that are strategizing to wrest control of our government have extensive training in the law. And they're getting to the point that through working with groups like the Federalist Society, they're understanding that achieving the kind of change that they want to see in our nation's government is really not going to be possible from a legislative standpoint. They've pretty much given up on legislating. If you know anything about the current Republican Congress, they do not legislate. They have gotten nothing done. So they've got all kinds of sideways folks in there now who are definitely loyal to Trump, but they're really just clowns at the circus. Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, they know nothing about legislating. So the really smart folks in that party are launching their attacks from a legal standpoint, and they're attempting to transfer an inordinate amount of power to the executive branch. So, of course, with the Supreme Court being stacked with conservative judges now because of Trump's presidency, we have some really wacky decisions that have come down over the summer related to the power of the presidency. Justice Roberts and the rest of the conservative Supreme Court judges have essentially ruled that the president has immunity from being prosecuted for any acts that were committed within the execution of his or her duties as president. And as I like to point out from time to time, that's not as big a precedent as some folks would have you believe, because when have we ever prosecuted presidents? But I digress. But we know obviously that that ruling in the hands of Trump and all of his cronies is going to mean something entirely different than it does in the hands of a more traditional president like Biden or any other contemporary president, really. So that's a really dangerous ruling that these Project 2025 folks are super pumped about, because it allows them so much more leeway when trying to orchestrate a complete takeover of the US government. And when you talk about this stuff, it just sounds so wild. It sounds so far out, like we're talking about cartoon villains, or we're engaging in hyperbole, or we're just trying to scare folks or something. But that's literally what these people are planning: a takeover of the US government, a slow coup. And they're trying to do it legally. They're doing it primarily through the legal and executive branches, skipping over the legislative branch entirely, stacking the Supreme Court, achieving new precedents like the ones they have this summer, particularly with the Chevron deference case, which basically says that Congress has the right to regulate governmental entities like the Environmental Protection Agency and the Food and Drug Administration, basically stripping those administrations of their regulatory power. Conservatives have been trying to dismantle the regulatory power of a lot of these agencies for a long time. So that Chevron deference decision was a very, very big victory for them. So JD Vance is a part of this bigger picture. He's all in with Project 2025, to the point that he wrote the foreword in Kevin Roberts' book. Kevin Roberts is the head of the Heritage Foundation, which puts out Project 2025. And JD Vance claims that Project 2025 has nothing to do with the Trump administration. Yet here we have Kevin Roberts celebrating the fact that JD Vance has been chosen as Trump's vice president. JD Vance is writing the foreword to Kevin Roberts' book, which is coming out this fall. Kevin Roberts' book lays out a roadmap for what he sees as a new era of conservatism in America. So the wagons are circling, and anyone who thinks that this is fear-mongering is not paying attention. The other piece of this puzzle is that JD Vance is pretty much bought and paid for by a guy named Peter Thiel. Now, Peter Thiel was one of the co-founders of PayPal. They call these guys the PayPal Mafia. Along with Elon Musk, Peter Thiel and a large group of now billionaires made their money from PayPal and other major organizations within the tech industry in the late 90s and early 2000s. So Peter Thiel, who calls himself a conservative libertarian, has made it his business to back a lot of political candidates that he wants to see moved through the pipeline. And somehow he really took a liking to JD Vance when Peter Thiel spoke at Yale Law School back when JD Vance was attending school there. So he completely bankrolled JD Vance's Senate run. JD Vance was lagging way behind, and he really didn't have a chance of winning. And Peter Thiel invested $15 million in JD Vance's campaign in Ohio for Senate. Peter Thiel's super PAC, his political action group, also took over the mechanisms of JD Vance's campaign. So his super PAC came in and took over the campaign for JD Vance, and they ran it for him. They put $15 million into it just to get JD Vance over the finish line for his Senate race in Ohio. This is back in 2022. And because JD Vance had been so critical of Donald Trump, he needed Trump's endorsement in order to win that Senate race. So Peter Thiel walked JD Vance into Trump's office at Mar-a-Lago, and he made the introduction between JD Vance and Trump. He basically had JD Vance come and kiss the ring so that he could gain Trump's endorsement. So JD Vance starts apologizing for all the hardline stances that he had taken against Trump with all the press stuff that he had done around his book, Hillbilly Elegy. He was very critical of Trump. He said a lot of awful things about Trump. He did not have a lot of respect for him. He saw right through him. But as a matter of political expedience, he needed Trump's support. So he did a complete 180 a couple of years ago, and he got on the Trump train. That's the long and short of it. He did what had to be done, and it benefited him. Once he got Trump's endorsement with Peter Thiel's help, he won the race. So he's been in the Senate less than 2 years, and now he's finagled his way onto the ticket to be the second most powerful man in the United States. Ain't that something? So as you can probably guess, a lot of the tech bros, including the biggest tech bro of them all, Elon Musk, they're all really excited about JD Vance's potential new position. A lot of these guys are heavily invested in cryptocurrency, and one really interesting fact that I'm not hearing a lot of people talk about right now is that there's a provision in Project 2025 that says our whole economic structure needs to be turned on its ear. And one possible solution that they propose is that we go back to the gold standard. And if not to the gold standard, then possibly a standard that relies entirely on cryptocurrency. This is in Project 2025. So a lot of the so-called crypto bros are really excited about the possibility of having someone in the White House who can help to advocate for that position. Historically, Trump has been very critical of cryptocurrency, but in the last year, he has strangely made a complete about-face, and suddenly he's speaking very positively about cryptocurrency. JD Vance is a huge investor in cryptocurrency, as is Peter Thiel, as is Elon Musk, and so many others. So there's a push right now for a lot of these tech billionaires to assert their influence in terms of the regulations of their industry, using someone like JD Vance as a conduit for that. So it's all pretty deep. You've got the right-wing Christian nationalist influence that JD Vance is very much a part of. And then you've got the billionaire tech bros that are also trying to make their move, who see JD Vance as an inroads to getting in Donald Trump's ear. So a lot of very powerful people are celebrating Trump's choice. And really, considering how negatively JD Vance has spoken about Trump, my guess is that it really was not Trump's decision entirely to bring JD Vance on. The one way in which it does benefit Trump is that it gives him the perception of having a bit of youthfulness on the ticket. That's always positive. And then JD Vance is from a Rust Belt state. Ohio's not really considered to be a bellwether state or a swing state anymore. It's pretty solidly red at this point. But there is a perception that because JD Vance wrote the book Hillbilly Elegy, that he's engendered a lot of goodwill with working class white people. And there are a lot of working class white folks in states like Michigan, Pennsylvania, Minnesota, Wisconsin, that Trump needs to win in order to secure the presidency. Now, I also think it's important to note as well that JD Vance has said some really disturbing things in relation to marriage and family. As he said in his book, Hillbilly Elegy, he grew up in a very dysfunctional home environment. His mother was addicted to drugs for most of his childhood, and he was raised by his grandparents.
That marriage was sacred, I think, was a really powerful thing that held a lot of families together. And when it disappeared, unfortunately, a lot of kids suffered. And this is one of the great tricks that I think the sexual revolution pulled on the American populace, which is this idea that, like, well, okay, these marriages were fundamentally, they were maybe even violent, but certainly they were unhappy. And so getting rid of them and making it easier for people to shift spouses like they change their underwear, that's going to make people happier in the long term. And maybe it worked out for the moms and dads, though I'm skeptical, but it really didn't work out for the kids.
So he's essentially saying that part of the downfall of American society is that women have gotten too big for their britches. It's too easy to get a divorce from a man who's being physically abusive towards you. So his grandmother was essentially getting her butt kicked every day and didn't have the resources or the familial or societal support to be able to get out of that situation. But for him, that's probably the best path, because her being able to leave her husband wouldn't have been the best thing for him, meaning JD, supposedly. So this kind of talk is basically laying the groundwork for another element of Project 2025, which is to get rid of no-fault divorce, making it a lot harder for women to leave their husbands. As I said in the piece on him, he is in favor of a national abortion ban with no exceptions for rape or incest. This is really extreme stuff, but it's where a lot of the Republican Party is headed these days. And I will note, you all know I come from a very conservative Christian background. I was raised partly in what's known as the evangelical movement. And I think a lot of those folks, non-denominational folks, get blamed for a lot of this right-wing Christian nationalist extremism. And that's completely accurate, but I think we should not minimize the influence of Catholicism on this movement. And there were Catholic folks like Francis Schaeffer and Paul Weyrich who were laying the groundwork for all of this stuff back in the 60s and 70s. And a lot of these adherents to those extreme policies around traditional family and the role of women and so on, that patriarchal concept, they are from the Catholic tradition, including Vance himself. They are from the Catholic tradition. including Vance himself. So don't just assume that this is all about those wild and crazy evangelicals. The Federalist Society is full of Catholics, and a man named Leonard Leo has been responsible for the majority of the Supreme Court picks that have come from Republicans. And all of those Republican Supreme Court appointees have been Catholic. And that's very intentional. 6 out of 9 Supreme Court justices are Catholic. So 66% of the Supreme Court is Catholic, while only 23% of the U.S. population is Catholic. That relates directly to their goal of taking down Roe v. Wade, which of course we know they were able to accomplish. So it's a lot to take in, I know, but I think it's really important to understand what it is that we're really up against. And there's plenty to be criticized with the Democratic Party, no doubt. But when you're dealing with folks who really don't have any interest in democracy the way that the framers intended, then we're facing opposition on a whole new level. And incidentally, Peter Theil is quoted as saying, "I no longer believe that freedom and democracy are compatible." I think it's really important to understand that a lot of these provisions that are outlined in Project 2025 are explicitly undemocratic. And a lot of people say that we should just stop freaking out about Project 2025 because this is a document that's been around since the early 80s. And yes, it has. I've talked about that in informational videos that I've done on the subject. But folks need to understand that since Kevin Roberts took over a couple of years ago, he took over the Heritage Foundation, Project 2025 has been on a completely different track. And it was Kevin Roberts' desire to ramp things up to a whole new level.
We are going to win. We're in the process of taking this country back. We are in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be.
So this is the so-called mandate for leadership on crack, as I like to say. We have not seen this level of ambition from the Heritage Society or any of the other conservative groups that have aligned themselves with the Heritage Foundation. So no, this is not your father's mandate for leadership. Project 2025 is something entirely different, and JD Vance has been put in place very deliberately to further the goals of that policy proposal. So I hope none of us are fooled when JD Vance or Trump himself claims to not know much about Project 2025 or says they don't have any association with it at all. 140 of Trump's former staffers are associated with Project 2025. They are his people. They wrote it. And both he and JD Vance are deeply aware of this plan and have every intention of implementing it as soon as they are able. So as I tell you all pretty much every week, stay aware, stay informed, check your voter registration. You can go to vote.org/DARA to see if your registration is current. Do not wait until October or, God forbid, November to try to start this process. And don't assume that just because you're in a red state or a blue state that your vote doesn't matter. Get your business in order and then check and double check to make sure that your voter registration is current. I recently moved states. I had to register to vote on 3 different occasions. It just didn't stick. They would not send me a voter registration card. On the 3rd time, finally it worked. So needle them, do what you have to do. Go to vote.org every once in a while, every couple of months. Check your voter registration to make sure that nothing is awry. If you can mail in vote, do that as early as possible. This is not a drill. I want to thank you all so much for joining me today. These are not easy subjects to talk about, but we're going to work through this together. Do not fall prey to hopelessness or cynicism. If our ancestors fought, we can fight right alongside them. We have to stay vigilant and we have to keep on our guard. I'm Dara Star Tucker. Join me on the KJLH Instagram page at Radio Free KJLH. You can also follow me on my personal page on Instagram at Dara Tucker B. Everywhere else, you can find me at Dara Star Tucker. That's Dara with 1 R and Star with 2. I'm looking forward to continuing to talk through these issues with you next week. I'll see you here at the same time, same place. You all take care of each other. And until then, let's learn to shout.